Welcome to Spark Starter, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Goede, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you the inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. I have a very special guest joining me here today, someone who has not only transformed her own life, but is now dedicated to empowering other ambitious women to do the same. Dr. Madeleine Heuer, has fondly known as Maddy, is a mindset and empowerment coach, guiding go-getters, leaders, and visionaries to consciously create lives filled with freedom, joy, and fulfillment. With a PhD in political science and a background in education, academia, and the corporate world, Maddy's journey took a pivotal turn when burnout forced her to reevaluate her path. This wake up call led her to align with her true self and desires, breaking free from self imposed limitations to create a life she truly loves. Maddy helps others break free from self sabotage patterns and elevate their mindset to achieve personal and professional goals with clarity, confidence, and ease. Maddy's international background, having grown up in Germany and Korea, and her love for travel, spirituality, and holistic well being is bringing a unique perspective to her coaching approach. Her mission is to guide others to break free from their limitations of their minds and empower themselves to create a life they truly love. Maddy, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me here today.
So, Maddy, it's always so interesting to me when I sort of dig in and do my research and figure out sort of people's backgrounds and really get to know them a little bit before they join us. And of course, because we had some funny scheduling things happening just due to time differences, and part of that is just your international, being able to do business from anywhere in the world. And we got an opportunity to do a little bit ahead of time. But I did want to take a little step back, if you don't mind. You have a PhD and in political science. So
Mhm.
help me understand sort of the academia world, the corporate world. Let's talk a little bit about what that looked like for you, and then how that led you to what you're doing now.
Okay, very good question. So, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, I tried different things in my career. So, I studied political science, and after my master's, I was like, what do I do? And it was basically my father's suggestion to do a PhD. Both of my parents have a PhD. So, I guess for them, they were like, yeah, it would be great if our daughter also did a PhD. And it wasn't anything that I was like really looking forward to, but at the same time, I didn't have like a specific job where I was like, this is what I want to do. So I was like, okay, might as well. So I applied only like at one university, and I didn't think I would get taken because it's actually tough to get in. And then I got accepted, and I was like, oh, okay. So then that's how I ended up basically doing a PhD. And what I have to say is, like, I'm definitely a nerd. I love expanding my knowledge. I like doing research. I like reading. I like writing. Like, I am a real nerd. But at the same time, doing a PhD was not really the best thing for me because it really went against my nature. So I'm a very dynamic, creative person. I don't like structure. I don't like routine. I like having my freedom and working on different projects at the same time. I prefer short-term projects as opposed to longer projects.
Sure.
And I wasn't so aware of all of this when I got into doing a PhD. But then as I started, I was like, I wasn't happy.
Mm,
I was struggling.
mhm.
again, not because it was too difficult for me, but because the way of life didn't align with what
Mm,
I really wanted.
right.
But I thought I would be a failure if I gave up. So then I pushed through and got the PhD. Then I was like, yes, this is my chance to finally have a fulfilling job. It's going to be amazing. I entered the corporate world, ended up in financial tech, a little bit random, but I was doing something related to like calculating carbon footprints. I always knew I wanted to do something good for the world. So that's how I, in a way, like got into it. And I realized, wow, I'm getting further and further away from how I want to live. And I increasingly got sick. I was chronically
Mm,
stressed. I was diagnosed with various things like chronic fatigue,
mm,
um, insomnia, many things. I was sent from one doctor to another.
sure.
And eventually I burned out. I was completely exhausted. I was completely depleted. And I couldn't continue anymore. And that was my turning point. So I quit that job and I was like, oh my God, I have to prioritize my health and well being. I have to reconnect to my joy. So
Yes.
then I traveled to Thailand, sunshine. I did another like yoga teacher training and I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And actually, coaching is something that had been on my mind for several years already, but I was afraid to fail. I was like, I don't even have a
Sure.
certification. I've never done it. I have to make use of my PhD. And like all of these thoughts like made me stop pursuing what I actually wanted. But then after my burnout, I was like, when, if not now, this is the best time to actually
Right.
try out what I want to do. So that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in. I got a coaching certification within a year. I developed a coaching program. I started working with clients. And yeah, so in hindsight, I can say the toughest period in my life, I have to say, gave me the most precious lesson, and that is to not betray yourself and go for it. If there's something that you really want, believe in yourself and just go
Mm.
for it. And that's what I did.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people don't really understand how much different getting a master's degree is versus getting a PhD. And I think there's like a couple things that are really difficult with that track, right? With getting a PhD. I think part of it is the fact that unlike a master's, that like to power through a master's is, what, 2 years? Whereas to power through a PhD is like 6 to 10 years. Like it's a long process when you do all that research and, have to actually then, create your dissertation and then you have to, what's it called when you have to um,
Defense?
defend it?
Yeah, at the
Exactly. Thank you.
end.
And then we read about the political science side of things, and then you talked about the carbon footprint, which I mean, there's just so your thirst for knowledge is massive, massive, Maddy. It's tremendous, and I love the altruistic portion of like the carbon footprint and doing something good for the environment. And I am curious, is there anything else that you still do at this point in time with having made this shift into your coaching business? Is there a part of it where you're still supporting or doing something with the environment, even from a volunteer basis?
I'm currently not volunteering, but of course, I try to live consciously. So I try to not use a lot of plastic, of course. I don't eat meat, for instance. I try to ride my bike instead of using the subway most of the time. So I try to be intentional about saving our planet. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I love that. I mean, it does start at home, right? If all of us sort of took that extra little care in the things that we did, it would make a huge impact. So, I personally also am a very, very big supporter of doing the right thing in the environment, and I do find myself bringing things home from other people's houses that don't recycle. Anyway, that's like a whole
Ah,
other
that
story.
resonates. Yeah, or like food that hasn't gone bad yet, but someone is like, "Oh, I can throw it away." I'm like, "No, no, this should be eaten. I can take it."
Exactly, exactly. So anyway, that's our little dovetail into that. But what about the poli-sci piece? Did you ever actually use that, or what was your actual thesis in your PhD program?
Ooh, wow. So So I'm half Korean, by the way. So it's related to the North Korean refugee or defector issues. So I basically explored how South Korean progressive and conservative actors on a governmental level, civil society actors, NGOs, how they approach the North Korean defector issue differently, and how their perception and understanding of the issue and the root causes basically lead to very different approaches in dealing with the very same issue. And it's
Interesting.
yeah, so like now in my coaching, I also focus on beliefs. Like I am convinced that we create our reality based on our beliefs. So I truly believe if you truly want to understand someone, whether you're looking at political science or trying to understand your partner, your friends, your coworkers, you got to understand, what do they truly believe? Because in the end, people don't create what they want, they create what they believe. So I'm all into beliefs, so this is definitely something that I've already been into back then.
Well, it's interesting in that one of my very first corporate jobs, I remember someone said to me, uh, people's people's perception is their reality. Like whatever they perceive
Yeah.
is their reality. And I mean, that's something that I still hold very clear and close to my heart now, because it is true. It doesn't matter if it is real or not. It's if they
Mhm.
believe that it's real or not, right? It's if their perception is that or not that. And so I mean, I love to hear that your practice is sort of rooted in that. It's so interesting what your background is, and what an incredible insight that you bring to your clients, having had that background, and even just sort of your global experience. I mean, being you live in Berlin now, and so
Mhm.
you're half German and half Korean, and then both of your parents having PhDs. I mean, you must have grown up in a very, very strong intellectual household.
Definitely, I would say that conversations about philosophy, like that was normal. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very intellectual for sure.
And so when you think about, getting to the point, so what allowed you to make the leap from corporate, right? I'm assuming that was sort of the last place that you were, and then
Correct.
starting your coaching business. And I know that you went and got all the certifications and did all the things, right? Because that you're an intellectual by background. So you were going to make sure to check all those boxes. But what actually was the catalyst? What actually allowed you to make the leap from corporate to starting your own business? Was there something in particular?
I would say it was my burnout, as I said before. Like, so I knew that I wanted to get into coaching. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to help people navigate their challenges in life, promote their well being. But I doubted myself. I was like, well, I have a background in political science. How am I going to get into it? Like, I never
Right.
did anything business related. How am I going to succeed? So basically, I was sabotaging myself. I was holding myself back.
Right.
And really this unprecedented level of suffering, I have to say, that I went through in my previous job. Like that, I always say it was like a butt kick from the universe. I needed this immense amount of suffering to finally have the courage to do what makes my soul happy. Because if I would have been somewhat happy, I think I
Mhm.
would have settled for it at least
Sure.
longer. But I needed that pain to be like, I cannot continue. So now is the time to follow my heart and follow my desires and try out something that I was previously scared, but I'm more scared of staying stuck in a situation, in a job that's leaving me unfulfilled and sick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially the health piece. It's interesting
Mhm.
how much that sort of red thread, the burnout red thread, how it impacts your physical health. And it's interesting how when you think 20 years ago, they were treated very independent of each other, right? Like, when
Right.
you think about the mental and the physical, you had one mental side, and they treat all the mental, and you had the physical, like internists that treated all the medical physical side of things. And then as this has continued to work through, and you figure out like how much burnout impacts
Mhm.
your life, etc. And what I love is you're just like, listen, I know I can't do this anymore. I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to just take the leap, because it doesn't seem like so. I'm not sure if your parents ended up working in academia, but did you have any sort of like role models or people who influence this entrepreneurial streak?
Mm. So first of all, sorry, I want to comment on what you said because I'm really into holistic health and well-being, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it. Like we're at this point where we know mind over matter, right? So if you're suffering like on a mental level, that has an impact on your body. And this is why I also have two certifications in yoga, a certification in meditation, because I'm all into integrating all of these aspects together. I think this is what we need to be able to thrive. So I just wanted to throw that in. So my inspiration, I guess, no, in my family, there are like my parents never got into businesses. They're in academia. So teaching basically, I didn't really have a lot of like close family members or any, honestly, or friends that became entrepreneurs, except for one, and that was one of my best friends, and she has been a huge source of inspiration for me. So her story is a little different but similar. So she was working in the marketing field for years, and she wasn't fulfilled. She wasn't happy. She didn't burn out, but she knew like this cannot be it. I'm not happy. I want to do something that I burn for. So she quit her job. She also traveled, and then she figured, well, I've always known I wanted to make this world a better place. I don't know how, but then she figured I want to get into education. And then boom, like she really drastically changed her career, and she has been successful with her new career as an entrepreneur. And that was really inspiring to me. So I remember when I was burned out, I had this one conversation with her. I was still scared and not ready to give up my job because I still thought that would make me a failure. But she was like, she just literally told me, like, you're working so hard to make someone else's dream come true.
Right.
Why don't you work on making your own dream come true?
Right.
And I was like, boom, that's all I needed to hear. It's true. I'm working my ass off. I'm not happy. I'm doing things that I don't want to do.
Right.
And I can put that effort into making my dream come true. So that was really what I needed to hear. And she's always been very supportive and been a cheerleader and a fan. And I also worked with her as my client. So I can definitely say like she has had a big influence on my journey.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's an incredible story. And I'm so thankful that you had someone in your life that sort of put that clarity for you, right? Which is like, you're working so hard, you're not fulfilled by it. Instead of helping create somebody else's dreams, why don't you create your own, right?
And it makes
And
so much sense, right? You hear
right.
this question and it's like, it's so obvious when you hear it.
Well, it is. It's always interesting to me. I'm part of a lot of women's groups, and it's an interesting mindset sometimes when people start companies. A lot of times, a lot of women want to start it to sort of like close a gap maybe in financials that exists within the family, right? They want to pay for a vacation or something like that. And then you have the other people that are in the pain point that you talk about, like, listen, I don't want to do this thing anymore. But a lot of times they don't have clarity about like what they've never done, the inward thinking and that process of really getting to know you and what it is that drives you. And so sometimes what happens is they still try to create a business for somebody else. It's
Right.
under the moniker of their own, like they would own it, but they're really fulfilling on somebody else's dream. And so I don't want to digress too far down that path, but it really truly is when you find that thing that you love and it makes your heart, I always call it like makes your heart sing.
Yay,
That's
yes.
the thing that you want, right? Because when we think about business, having a business is not easy. Right? I mean, there's a lot that goes into having your own business. And so, Maddy, when you think about creating your business, what has been the most difficult aspect of having your own business?
Okay, very good question. I would say it's doing everything on your own. But also for me, it was like kind of lacking clarity. So from doing a PhD, I was used to doing everything on my own, literally. But then like I went into the corporate world, and as an employee, like people tell you what to do. Like you might have some freedom, but like,
Mhm.
you know, there's a roadmap, there are goals, and
Right.
you know what you need to do. When you jump into becoming an entrepreneur, like you're your own boss, you have all of the freedom that you could possibly have, which is amazing. But at the same time, it can be overwhelming to be like, okay, where do I start? What do I do? And
Right.
not have like a team. Before I had a team, I could
Right.
delegate tasks. And then it was like back to me being myself. And I had to figure everything out. Like I built my own website for the first time. I had never built a website. I found out how to do like posts or social media posts, how to do like marketing and sales, how to do sales calls, like all of these things. There are so many more things that you have to figure out as an entrepreneur. And it can be a lonely journey because you're doing a hell of a lot on your own if you don't get support. So I would say this was one of the biggest blessings because I like having my freedom and being my own boss, but also something that was challenging at first. And in hindsight, I think I should have gotten support earlier because
Yeah.
actually you don't have to figure out everything on your own.
Right.
But back then I was like, I want to figure out everything on my own.
Right. It's very common, Maddy. You are not alone. I would say that it's like virtually 100% of every female entrepreneur that I've interviewed is very much like I could do it. You know, it's like I almost
Yeah.
call it like and I mean this in a loving way, even though it may not sound that way, but it's a little bit like that toddler mentality. It's like me do, like I can do it. I don't need anybody else to help me. And I really think that from doing all these interviews, what I actually think the insight is that, and I would be curious to know if you feel the same. I think it's like sometimes we hide behind our insecurities and we say that we can do it ourselves because we're actually afraid of not being able to get support or get the help from someone else or not knowing where to get it. And so I don't know if you run into that with the people that you are coaching in your business, but I'd be curious if you run into that same thought or same mentality.
For me, it was, I think usually like the biggest block that exists that holds us back. In other words, the way we sabotage ourselves, or one of the root causes of self-sabotage, because it's literally nothing else. It's nothing external or no other person that is holding us back. We're making decisions that are delaying our result and our progress, right? By,
Mhm.
for instance, not getting help when we could. I think the biggest root cause is fear.
Mm.
Fear of, it can be fear of failure. I think, like, I've talked to a lot of people and I think this is one of the biggest ones. Even if I get support and if I don't make it, I will feel like I'm just not good enough. My self-worth
Right.
might depend on it. I think a
Right.
lot of people might think this subconsciously, or it can also be fear of success, which I realized not too long ago that I have that because I always thought I had fear of failure,
Mm.
which is there. I've worked a lot on it, so it's not as big anymore. But I realized, oh my God, people can also be afraid of success. I saw this interview and someone was talking about it and was like, yeah, if you've had a burnout or a very severe thing that you went through that took a huge emotional toll, you might subconsciously but like try to protect yourself by holding yourself back from achieving even more success because you think it might take away your health, your joy, your freedom, or whatever. And I realized that has been a big factor for me. Um,
Interesting.
so I think fears, and one of also the biggest fears is fear of judgment.
Right.
That I've heard from a lot of people. So, oh, will this coach judge me? Will other people judge me when I show up
Mhm.
on social media? What will my friends say? What will my parents say? Whatever. But yeah, fear of judgment, I think, is definitely also a really big, big thing that holds us back.
That's I love that. I want to like almost like print that out, right? It's we think we're holding ourselves back, but really we're holding ourselves or sorry,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of exactly how you said it, but it's like this idea of fear of success, right? It's not fear of failure, it's fear of success. Is really that's a very interesting insight. I love that. And so Maddy, when you sort of like alluded to freedom and some things like that, but really like when you think about having your business, what would you say is the thing that like makes you the most happy? Like what has been the biggest
Mhm.
success in having your business? Like What is that really? Because we say it's freedom, but like define that.
I think freedom is definitely one, but there's two things that immediately popped into my mind. And one is really being able to see the progress that my clients make and helping them conquer their goals. Like
Yeah.
all of my clients have achieved their goals successfully. Most of them, the vast majority, like exceeded their goals. And they were like, wow, like I didn't know I could achieve that much. So that gives me so much happiness and joy just to be like, oh my God, like this is effective, this is working. Because I truly believe that this is not just a job that I have or my career, this is my passion and purpose. I do believe this is related to my life mission. So that definitely makes my soul happy and smile. And the second thing, definitely freedom. Because I'm someone like freedom is one of my top values. Like I know my top values: love, compassion, freedom, joy. Freedom is definitely one. um, I love having the freedom to work the way I want to, when I want to, from where I want to. I get to travel and work from here and there. I get to choose my own projects. I get to choose who I collaborate with. I get to choose which products I develop. I get to choose who I work with. So there is a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But for me, the benefits definitely outweigh the disadvantages. And I just love that amount of freedom. But I do have to say that I think it depends on the nature of a person, like whether this is something that is natural or comfortable for someone. So there are people who strive or who thrive more in environments where they feel control, where they have more structure, where they have more routine, where there's more predictability. So risk taking for these kind of people is more like not comfortable. Fear kicks in, anxiety kicks in, and they can't handle it as well. So it really depends on your nature. Like I'm good with risks. I find it exciting. I'm good with freedom. I like it. So I think for me, this is perfect.
Yeah, there's so much there. It's I always talk about it as like, you have house cats. They're the people who love to go to work every day. They want that structure. They want to know they start their their day at a certain time, they end their day at a certain time. It's very much that sort of like, kept sort of mentality. And then I call the rest of us, like the entrepreneurs, right? The people who have our own business, we're more like the wildcats.
Yeah.
We're more like we want to be able to sort of like flex our muscle wherever we want to, whenever we want to, however we want to. And we want that flexibility to be able to do that. So Maddy, when we get into these businesses, we have an idea, right, of what they're going to be. And we certainly start them because it's like to fulfill our passion. And we get into like the stuff that we're like, oh, I don't really want to have to do this. It's not like my favorite thing. But then there are all these other things that fill us. But what is something that actually surprised you? So when you started your business, what was something that was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect this?
So I think definitely one thing was it's more difficult to get consistent clients than I thought. So
Yeah.
really, I think this is maybe like mistake or a lesson that at least a lot of coaches learn. At first, most coaches like me, you focus on the coaching. You're like, ooh, what's going to be my niche? I'm going to develop a program. Who am I going to work with? I'm going to create a workbook. So you really focus on like your craft or your offering, which is of course an important basis. Like there's no doubt about that. But then if you don't consider the entrepreneurial side, the financial side, the sales and marketing, you're not going to be able to offer your services for a long time. So so definitely like social media marketing and sales is something that I underestimated at first. And I was like, gonna figure it out on my own. It's just like posting a few times, and that's what I thought. And then I realized as I tried, I was like, okay, there's definitely a lot more to it. Now I know a lot better. You need structure, you need to have systems, you need to have understanding of how to craft your messages and so on. And yeah, there's so many learnings that I had like along the journey, but I definitely underestimated that part, getting clients consistently.
I'm surprised that more people don't talk about that because 100% that is a pain point every single one of us has. I don't care how
Yeah,
long
and
you've been in business. I don't care how big your company is. Finding the customers, keeping the customers, right? Finding and retaining, attracting and retaining customers is absolutely a foundation. It's like the most important thing because if you don't have anyone to buy your thing, right? Like you don't have a company. So thank you so much for
Right.
sharing that, because people do not talk about that enough.
Mm. And I think maybe it's because, like, if you look at, like, the coaching industry, like, it's kind of, like, almost cool to be a coach now. I don't know, so many people are getting into
So
coaching,
many.
but if you look at the data, most of them, within 3 years or 2, they drop out because they're not able to sustain themselves, they're not able to attract their ideal clients consistently, they don't make enough
Right.
money, so
Right.
even though they're passionate at first, they cannot continue. So it's definitely a big pain point that many entrepreneurs, especially coaches, I'm not as sure about other niches, are going through. It's real.
Yeah, it is. And when you think about, being able to sort of like offload the things that you don't love to do, when you are a
Mhm.
coach, unfortunately, a lot of the sales is going to fall in your lap because people are buying you,
Right.
right?
Right. You're the brand.
You're
You're
the
the brand.
brand. And so,
That's true.
unfortunately, if you don't love sales, I don't know that coaching is the best business for you to get into, because you have to do a lot of the sales part.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. So, Maddie, if people love what they've heard from you today and they want to reach out and get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So there's different ways. Of course, I have a website that is create with Maddy, Maddy.com. I'm also on Instagram, dr.madeleine.heuer, my name. I'm also on Facebook, Madeleine Heuer, and on LinkedIn. And you can also book your first free 30-minute discovery call with me if you're interested at overcoming self-sabotage and really crushing your personal or professional goals. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you want support. By the way, I opened up my coaching because during the introduction you said I work with women. I did for a while, but I opened up my coaching to men as well. So I'm also working with men, going really well. So I don't care about the gender. If you're feeling stuck, get in touch with me.
Thank you for clarifying that. Sometimes our audiences do evolve over time. So,
Mm,
and I know that my show books out quite a bit. So I think we probably originally scheduled this interview months ago,
yeah.
and so thank you very much for clarifying that point. Maddie, as we come to the end of our time here, is there anything else that you feel like would be valuable for our listeners to hear today, or something that you haven't been able to share that you think is important for them to hear?
Mm. I think it's really important to understand that when you are stuck, so it doesn't matter which area of your life, whether it's in your career, in your relationship, whether there's some personal goals, you want to lose weight or whatever, whenever you are stuck, but you know exactly what you need to do and you still fail to take action, then that is because subconsciously you're holding on to some sort of limiting beliefs. So, beliefs that make you doubt that you can succeed. And
Mm.
most of these times, that's the tricky thing. These limiting beliefs are hidden in our subconscious mind and we internalize them during our childhood. So, whenever you're stuck, you know what you need to do, but you can't unstuck yourself.
Right.
You got to work on your mindset. And if you can't do it on your own, get help. Work with a coach or with someone else, a guide or a mentor. You don't have to figure things out on your own. Listen, like believe in yourself, get the help when you need it, and then crush your goals. Live that
100%.
dream life, create that dream life that you really desire and that you deserve. Don't settle for less.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Maddie, there is one last question that I have for you. And I ask every single one of my guests the same question, which is, what is one word or a short phrase that you would give to another woman who's looking to start or build her business?
Mm. One word. That's
Or a
so
short
difficult.
phrase?
Oh my God, I'm thinking like there are already like so many popping up in my head. I'm a fast thinker. Oh, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. Believe in yourself and just do it. Even when you don't feel ready, just do it. Even when it's uncomfortable, just do it. All you need is self-belief and consistent action. Yeah, just get
Absolutely.
started.
And that's a lot of times the hardest part, right? Is making the
Mm,
decision. It's like making the decision and then in actioning it. So
right.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing all of your incredible insights. Your clients are very lucky to work with you and learn from your experiences. I want to thank everyone who joined us live here today, as well as each of you who joined us from the convenience of your own home. Thank you so much for being a listener on the Spark Starter podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Goede, and on behalf of all the awe-inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.